Hey everybody, I'm going to introduce you to the granddaddy, the great granddaddy of almost every single concert camera made from say 1960 to 2010. This is the Exakta Model B made in 1935 Germany, and it started the majority of everything. Hang tight because it's only part of the story, and I'm going to tell you the rest of it in just a moment. I'm Robert Maxfield, and I've been a concert photographer in Dallas Fort Worth for 45 years, and I've covered a lot of major bands over that time. And right now, I'm going to cover a little bit of the background and the history of photography, but not only that, but what leads to concert photography. And this is the Exakta Model B, made in 1935, single lens reflex camera. It started a majority of a revolution that led until oh, probably in all the way up to digital to 2014. So it went from this camera to this camera, which is basically a lot very similar, but has a pentaprism, which we're all pretty much familiar with. But even these Exactas were very unusual. They're very quirky. First of all, they're left-handed, and they're very well made, and they're very heavy. But these machines started an SLR revolution that lasted up until the 2000 teens. Starting at around, I guess 1980, this was my weapon of choice. This is the Olympus OM1N with a 135 millimeter f2, actually f2.5 in an auto winder, and full manual camera, uh, manual focusing, manual everything. And then from there, this eventually went to what I use today, the Nikon D800 with an 80 to 200 f2.8. This is the rig of choice, but this is all cameras. And camera, when it started out, was only part of the equation. And today, it's a little more important. But in the old days, how did concert photographers in the 60s and 70s get concert photography? We had low light, we had color lights, we had bad conditions, but they still pulled off what they needed to do. A lot of people talk about needing high ISO to perform concert photography, and trust me, before 2000, there was no such thing. The the camera is important today simply because you can take that camera and go into very dark clubs where you couldn't go before without a flash, and pull things off at very high ISOs, and that's a plus. But back in the old days, what they would do is they would take a camera similar like this, and they would use a 400 ISO, or at that time it was called ASA film. If you were in Europe, it was 27 DIN. And Kodak created Tri-X pan film in 1954, and it had an ISO, back then an ASA rating of 400, and that was just about the fastest speed you could get. If I remember right, Agfa had one back in the 40s that was 1200, and believe it or not, Polaroid had a very high speed film that fit their folding Polaroids way back in the 50s. But as a general rule, 400 ISO was the fastest speed you could get. It wasn't until the mid 1970s before you got color uh, 400 ISO film or ASA film. Fuji came out with a version of Fujicolor that was 400 ISO in 1976, and that was pretty much the first time in which you got color film that would do that. And it wasn't too much long after that Kodak came out with Ektachrome 400, which revolutionized and allowed you to have color slides of your concerts. So back in those days, you wouldn't have anything faster than that, or very little to choose from. There were some things that were, some films that were later developed that were 800 ASA, 1600 ASA, but they were very less common. As a general rule, most practicing photographers that were concert photographers at the time would do a process called pushing their film, which would leave it in the developer for a little longer. The only problem with that is you had to be careful and had to watch excess heat. Otherwise, your grain, which today for the digital world would be noise, grain back in those days would become very large and very noticeable. And if you went to enlarge your photograph to a very large size, you'd start to notice the grain quite a bit. So to keep the grain small, you develop it at normal. So that's pretty much a little bit of history about high-speed film. And today, your ISO is the, I guess the easy way to think of it, ASA, ISO are the same, even though there are some differences in the digital world compared to the film world. It's still the sensitivity of what your camera is reading or trying to put the image on, whether it's the sensor or it's the film plane. Back in the day, they would take photographs like you see in the thumbnail on this video. That was shot with Tri-X pan for Tri-X film at 400 ISO ASA at the time. Thanks to Golden Earring for having the photograph that I took. That's got to be probably circa 1980, early 1980s. And thanks for watching. If you see anything you like, hey, push the like button, ring the bell, subscribe to the channel. We're growing. We do appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, confusions, whatever, put them in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.